The process of lost wax casting involves multiple steps to turn a wax model into precious metal. In this video, we'll talk about how best to sprue up your wax tree so that it's ready for casting, and we'll start to explain the casting process, which uses a vacuum casting machine. The first step is to weigh the rubber base. We'll weigh this once again once our wax is sprued on. An accurate wax weight will tell us an accurate metal weight, which is really important. A wax rod is called a sprue, and we must attach the sprue to the model and then the model to the main wax tree. The points where the sprues join the tree and model are called the gates, and we must ensure a closed gate with a solid seal in order to help the flow of the metal. Different models will be sprued up in different places. Ideally, you want the sprue to be at the thickest part of the model, but in an area that isn't so textured to disturb the design of the model. In these examples, I'm putting the sprue to the side of the signet ring to not disturb the front-facing texture. And again, with the ring, the sprue is at the back to not disturb the texture. With the larger model, I'm using 2 or 3 sprues to help with the metal flow to all areas. Once it's cast, we want to be able to file away where the sprue was so that you're unable to tell where it was. Models want to be attached to the central tree at between a 30 to 45 degree angle. This is all to help the flow of the metal. With gravity as well as a vacuum pressure on our side, this will increase the chances of success. It's key to note that once the flask is in the machine, it will be upside down, so all the rods and models will be pointing down. Once the waxes are successfully sprued to the tree, remember to weigh the base again. Now with an accurate wax weight, we can calculate the metal weight. Each metal has a different density, so depending on what metal you cast in depends on the calculations. For example, sterling silver's density is 10.1. So for this flask to be cast in silver, I can see that my wax weight is 14 grams. So 14 times 10.1 is 141.4. I then need to add 10% to this to account for the button. This is excess metal that is needed for casting. So for our example flask, I would need 155.5 grams of silver. We have different sized flasks that we can cast in, depending on the size and amount of models in each one. When spruing up, we must also take into account which flask we're using. We need to have at least a 10 to 15 ml gap from the sides and top of the flask to ensure a thick enough wall of investment so the metal doesn't break through under the vacuum. The next step would be to invest the flasks. This is done by mixing a plaster-like substance to encase the wax models in their flask. We will then put the flasks in a kiln to burn away the wax, lost wax casting. This will then leave an empty cavity to allow the metal to flow freely into the models. Finally, the hot flask will be put into the casting machine for the metal to be poured in.